Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Microsoft Identity Management, Chapter 2. Our presenters today will be Steve Angel, our Solutions Architect based out of Alpharetta, Georgia, Phil Bartholomew, our Executive Director of Identity Access Management based out of Alpharetta, and Peter McKenzie, our Director of Sales based out of Toronto. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and the slides will be sent out in 2 to 3 business days. If you have any questions during the presentation, please place them into the chat box. Now I'm going to pass it over to Steve.
Thank you, Victoria. 1 second here to get the presentation up. And good afternoon, everyone. As Victoria stated, my name is Steve Angel. I am a solution architect with New Signature with a specific focus on identity and access management. So as we get started, first we'll take a look at the agenda here. And the items we're going to be focusing on are the challenges around identity management and prevention of identity theft. We'll look at ways historically that these challenges have been met. We'll talk a little bit about Microsoft Identity Manager as an identity management platform. And then we'll look at specific ways that MIM can thwart identity theft in the corporate enterprise. We're going to have a quick demo today of MIM, and we'll focus on MIM's ability for provisioning user accounts, deprovisioning user accounts, as well as some self-service capabilities that are built into the MIM platform that can help prevent identity theft. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit more information about New Signature, as well as some potential Q&A, provided we have questions coming in from the participants. So with that, let's jump right in and start talking about the challenges that we face with identity management, with specific focus on how to stop identity theft. And the first thing that we always typically think about are around creating user accounts in the enterprise. And the questions you have to think about and ask yourself around creation of user accounts is, are the accounts created accurately? Are they being created securely? And are they being created in a timely manner? One thing we sometimes forget is that there can actually be revenue lost by new users coming in and having to wait for account information. But on the other side, creating accounts too soon can leave them left idle, which makes them a target for potential attackers. We also have to think about removing access when a user is no longer employed. Is this handled in a timely manner? If so, is the procedure consistent and reliable, or are the accounts again left idle for unauthorized access and potentially another target for attack? And what about controlling authorization as an employee advances or as job responsibilities shift? We sometimes refer to this as access creep, but basically we're talking about role-based access control and ensuring that the user only has enough access to perform their day-to-day activities. And then we can think about self-service as a means for preventing identity theft. I mean, there's obviously cost savings around reducing the burden on IT for self-service password resets and self-service account unlocks. But this also reduces the opportunity for an attacker to leverage IT services to circumvent controls. An attacker can call the help desk or service desk to fraudulently reset a password or unlock an account that is no longer active. We also have to think about reporting on activity, the ability to track not only identity creation, but identity deletion, as well as changes in levels of authorization for users. And as we're putting these systems and controls in place for security, for provisioning users and managing user identity data, we also have to think about the exchange of data between systems. Is this being performed securely? Is it being done so in a manner that would potentially prevent sniffing or man-in-the-middle attacks? And also, don't forget about governance. How are the accounts being updated? Who has the ability to perform the updates on these accounts? And is this managed well? Is it handled by various applications? Is it handled manually, etc.? And what about handling requests for access to sensitive data? Many times users are granted access to perform the day-to-day activities, but over the course of their job responsibilities, they may run across situations where they need to request additional levels of access. And how is that access request being reviewed, approved, or denied? And then finally, what about super user administrative level access? What about tracking for who has administrative access within the organization, as well as any changes that may occur in the environment while this user has that elevated access? So all these questions probably have you, the person responsible for managing access to corporate resources, scratching your head and thinking about all the ways that this is being handled today. I mean, it is a lot to think about. First, you have to think about all the various platforms that are in the environment. And typically, this will start with Active Directory. But right on the heels of Active Directory, you also have email, and who has email, and how you're controlling access to email. Immediately after that, you may have to think about on-premise applications. These applications sometimes include their own authentication and authorization mechanisms. And in some cases, they do leverage Active Directory, but they could also leverage other directory services such as LDAP as well. And in today's world, we also have cloud-based or software as a service applications, and managing and controlling access to these applications are just as important. All of these challenges create a huge challenge for IT. On one hand, we have to provide timely access to users to satisfy business needs, but on the other hand, we have to do so in a secure manner to protect corporate data. So how have we handled these challenges in the past? Well, historically speaking, there are several approaches, and in many cases, you may even find many or all of these in practice within the same organization. In many cases, different groups are responsible for handling access requests for different systems. The most common approaches we see are around automated processes. These can be anything from PowerShell scripts to in-house created applications that handle basic provisioning or deprovisioning of your user accounts, or perhaps it's just simple attribute flow between systems to keep things like first names, last names, or other contact information updated in Active Directory. After automated processes, we typically see manual processes or workflows. These can be a combination of manual or automated, and in some cases, you see that they are both working in tandem. Many times this can start with a simple email request or perhaps a manual form that has to be created and then is routed to various individuals for approval or action. The positive side of this is there is a process that has been created and is followed, but many times the process is tedious and slow and does not always result in timely creation of accounts. Likewise, there also can be challenges around auditing and reporting and validation that the request is being handled appropriately. And then you also have to bring in consideration for cloud services or software as a service applications where single sign-on technologies may be in place, such as Federation or SAML. These also have to be considered for accessing applications that are outside the confines of the corporate network. So wouldn't it be grand if all of this could be simplified while at the same time creating a most secure solution for managing identities throughout their life cycle? And with Microsoft Identity Manager as the core of your identity management solution, it can. Among the features provided by Microsoft Identity Management Platform, let's start with self-service. Here you can see that self-service password reset and self-service account lockout are part of the MIM platform. As previously stated, not only does this capability save costs, but also provides a means of preventing would-be attackers from fraudulently gaining access by manipulating the help desk or service desk in order to reset an account or to gain access to an account that has not yet been used. From there we go to Active Directory, and MIM can manage the complete life cycle of users, groups, certificates, smart cards, and more once integrated with Active Directory. Provisioning and deprovisioning, attribute flow, role-based access control for users is typically the areas where we see the most adoption, but there are additional capabilities as well, such as the addition of additional self-service capabilities within the portal, where users can access the MIM portal and manage specific information about their identity as controlled by the administrator. So if you think about this, if you look at attributes that are typically stored about a user throughout the enterprise, there may be information such as mobile numbers that you want to allow the user to manage for themselves. And once the user has entered that information into the portal, it can then be propagated across the enterprise so that the information remains consistent. Any of these attributes can be selected by the administrator so you can control which values the users are able to update and which ones they are not. Another feature of MIM is password synchronization, and this is accomplished leveraging the password change notification service. This allows passwords to be synchronized from Active Directory to other connected directories where the identity and password may be unique and not necessarily leveraging the identity that's stored in Active Directory. But by keeping the password synchronized in a secure manner, users are able to use a consistent password and achieve a same sign-on experience across the organization. Now, when it comes to role-based access control, reporting, and attestation, New Signature has developed solutions for the MIM platform to incorporate these. And additionally, by adding Behold, there is also the ability for role modeling capabilities that can then be leveraged to develop the role-based access control model. And finally, and one of the key capabilities of MIM is around provisioning and deprovisioning of identities. The demo coming up will showcase these capabilities for Active Directory, but other identity directories can also be managed directly by Microsoft Identity Manager. So before we jump into the demo, I want to recap just a little bit and talk about how MIM specifically can thwart identity theft. And if you remember all the identity challenges we faced from the earlier slides, when it comes to protecting corporate identities from identity theft, I want to walk through some of the key methods that MIM can step in to help protect corporate identities. First and foremost is timely and automated provisioning and deprovisioning of user accounts. Next, we'll talk about a secure approach to user self-service. This is specifically around password resets and account unlock, and I will show you those during the demo. Role-based access control. When you're thinking about Active Directory, this is typically focused on group management. However, keep in mind that MIM can manage other platforms, and in many cases that goes beyond group management and may have more to do with managing identity attributes of that user cross-platform. We want to make sure we're auditing and reporting changes in the environment as relates to identity, not only from a creation and a removal perspective, but also changes in authorization levels. We want to ensure that we have secure data synchronization across the enterprise, but we also want to keep in mind that we need governance in place as well. And by having one source for identity information and identity management, a lot of that governance can be enforced by the identity management platform. We want to make sure we're able to manage requests so that users requesting access to sensitive data can be reviewed and approved or denied appropriately. MIM includes workflow capabilities where users can request access to information. The request can be routed to an approving manager where it can then be reviewed and either approved or denied either through their Outlook client or through the Microsoft Identity Manager portal. And then we'll spend a little bit of time at the very end talking a little bit about privileged access management and Microsoft's approach using Microsoft Identity Manager to provide just-in-time and just enough administration access. So before we jump into the demo, just a little bit of background as to what you're going to see in the systems that are at play here. As you can see on the screen, we were using the fictitious Contoso environment. We do have Active Directory within the environment. We have a SQL deployment that is managing or hosting all of the databases for the MIM platform. We have a MIM server that is running the synchronization service, which is really where all the identity and attribute information come into the MIM platform. The MIM service, which handles requests to and from the MIM portal. We have a SharePoint server that's hosting the MIM portal for both administration, user interaction, as well as password registration and password reset. And for the purpose of today's demo, we have a Contoso HR system that is represented by an exported flat file. Now you'll also notice here we have other options such as using a database view or web services interface as well, but for the purpose of the demo we're going to be using an exported flat file. And then we also have a Windows 10 workstation that we will be using to demonstrate the self-service password reset as well as the self-service account unlock activities. And for the purpose of the demo today, I did go in and pull one user's name, Mr. Mark Hall, from the attendees list, and we will be using Mark Hall's identity for the demonstration. Now during the demonstration, what you're going to see is user provisioning to Active Directory, user deprovisioning from Active Directory. We'll show you some attribute flow that's occurring between the HR system and Active Directory. We'll demonstrate self-service password reset capabilities, and that also includes the registration process, and then self-service account lockout. So with that, I'm going to flip over to our lab environment. And what you're looking at here is the Microsoft Identity Manager portal, and this is where not only a lot of the administration will take place, but also from a user perspective, if you're allowing users to make changes to their identity, such as updating that mobile number we talked about earlier, this is the environment where they would be doing that. And an extension of this portal is also for the self-service password registration as well as self-service password reset and unlock, which we will be demoing momentarily. So one thing I want to do is I want to jump in here first, and we said we're going to be using Mr. Hall's identity as a new user demonstration here. And what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and we're going to do a search for all users and verify that we do not have a Mark Hall in the system. Likewise, I'm going to switch over to Active Directory real quick. And we'll do a quick update on our MIM Provision OU. This is where all new users will be created, and do a refresh there just to verify that we do not have Mark Hall in Active Directory as well. Now I mentioned that we're using a flat file for our simulated HR system, and this is just a common limited file. And this is a copy of the header that we're actually using the file, so we'll walk through this. We've got a department, we've got a department name, we've got an employee name, which is first and last. I've already copied Mark Hall's name over here, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to update this new record, and we'll be placing this into the MIM platform. We've got an employee ID, and this is critical because this has to be a unique ID. This is what we're actually using to join any existing users, so we're just going to increment that by 1 and change that to a 5, and now we have a new user in the environment. We have an employee status. You'll see that here is A for active, and keep this in mind, we will be coming back to this a little bit later in the demo for the deprovisioning demonstration. We've got a fax number, and we'll just change this to 79. We've got first name here. We'll update this to Mark. City's Atlanta. Manager doesn't matter. It's my name, of course. We'll change this phone number to Here we have the last name, and we're going to update that to Hall. We'll leave the state and the street address the same, and then we'll update this number to just 999. And Mr. Hall, not sure what your occupation is, but for today, you're going to be a developer. And now we're going to set the account name to M Hall. Now, one thing I will point out here is this is simply for the sake of the demo. Typically what we'll see is we can build into the MIM platform the creation of the account name based on any number of factors. So in some organizations like we're demonstrating here, this could be a combination of first initial, last name, and we can formulate that on the fly based on the information from HR. In some cases it may be an initial and then part of the employee ID. Any number of combinations can work here, but again, for the purpose of the demo, we're keeping it fairly simple and straightforward. Now, one other thing, you'll see here that I've got Contosos with the last two O's replaced with 0, and I did that because this is part of the password that gets generated for this user when they are provisioned into Active Directory. And the second part of that password is going to be the employee ID. Now again, this is for demo purposes. We can do any number of things here, including even generating a random account string or number, which I'll also show you on the deprovisioning process later. But for now, we're going to just save that as a placeholder. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy this record, and then we're going to go over to our MIM platform, and we're going to update our HR system with this new record. So what we'll do here is we'll go to the end of the line, and then we'll use our clipboard and type in this new record into our HR file, and then we're going to save our HR record. And now that that's done, we're going to kick off a processing cycle. And MIM does run on a scheduled basis, and that depends on any number of factors. But here we're just simulating that that process is being kicked off in a timely manner by doing it manually. And the first thing we run here is a full import and full sync from the MIM system, and that is to make sure that any changes in configuration are pulled in before any additional processing happens. But on up on the list, you'll see here that our Contoso HR management agent has run. We've gone through a full import and full sync there. We do have a new projection that has been brought into the system. And you should see that that unique ID matches our employee ID from our new record. If we go in here and look at the properties on this, we'll see that the account name is M Hall. We've got an employee name of Mark Hall, and then first and last name. So this is our new record. We scroll down just a little bit more, we can also look and see that our we have some outbound synchronization going to our Contoso Active Directory. And if we pull up this new provisioning ad, you'll see here we've created the canonical name for this user. The DN has been created. And if we go in and look, we can see the employee ID and the other values for that new user. Now our processing has completed, so we're going to actually come back over to our MIM Portal, and we're going to do a new search. And we should see that Mark Hall has now been added and is in the Microsoft Identity Management Platform. We'll come over here real quick, and we'll also do a refresh in Active Directory in our MIM Provisioned OU. And now you see that Mark Hall has also been created here as well. If we go in and look at the value, the attributes for Mark, you'll also see that his first name and last name have also been populated. And this is coming from the attribute flow as we went through the processing. The last name has also been updated, and any changes in the HR system to reflect modifications to information would also be updated on the next processing run. So with that, we're going to switch over to our Windows 10 workstation. We're going to log in with a new user, and we're going to select the domain option. And now we want to log in with Mr. Hall's new account. We're going to come back over here. We're going to grab this password that should have been generated during the provisioning. and we're going to paste that into, whoop, helps to go to the right screen. We're going to paste that in here, and as you can see, we're logging in with the password that was established during the user provisioning. So this is going to take just a few minutes, so I'm going to toggle back over to our browser while the Windows 10 experience is loading. And we're going to open a new browser. We're going to do in private so that we are getting a fresh browser session with no stored credentials. And we'll go down here and I'm going to select password registration. Now, when I toggle back over to the screen, we're not going to go through this, but when I toggle back over to the Windows 10, you'll see that this process is launched automatically. But while we're waiting, I just want to fill some time and show you what this looks like. So we'll paste in that same password again. And this is the password registration portal where users would go through the process of registering for self-service password reset. And there's several things we'll touch on here. The process for registration is fully customizable. It can be incorporated with Azure Multi-Factor Authentication. But here in this lab instance, we've just got a preset pool of questions that will be presented to the end user. Now the pool of questions is customizable. Here we have it set for 6, but it can be set for as many as you like. And then the number of questions that are presented to the user are also defined. So paste in our password here again. And here you'll see the questions that have been predefined. Now, as I stated, here we have 6, but you could have a pool of 10 and require that the user, or present the user with 8 and require that only 6 are answered to complete the registration process. In this setup, we have 6 and we're requiring 6. However, the number that would be presented to the user after they register and they're trying to perform any of these self-service activities will actually be set to 3. So we're back at our Windows 10. You see that the browser has opened to automatically direct the user to the self-service password reset. Excuse me, the self-service password registration. We'll type our password in here again. And here you'll see the same thing that we saw before. So we're going to go through and complete the registration process. For our favorite color, we're going to put blue. For father's middle name, we will select John. Mother's maiden name, we'll just enter Adams. Favorite movie, I'm going to enter one of mine, which is Braveheart. City you were born, we'll set that to Greensboro. And last name of your favorite teacher, I'm going to set to Atkins. And now we have completed our registration process. It should come back and say that registration was successful. And at that point, we are able to perform self-service password activities. And as you can see, that is now complete. Now, for password resets, I'm actually going to show you 2 different ways that we can actually perform this activity. So to do that, I need to log off of this workstation first. And we'll go back over here to our browser real quick. And we're going to close this tab. And then we'll go to the password reset portal, which is also part of MIM. And here you can see that we're being asked for our user ID, which is Contoso/M Hall. And if we hit next, we should be prompted for the security questions, or 3 of the security questions that we've previously entered. And if we answer those questions, we can then proceed forward and then perform our self-service password reset. But I'm going to come back to that so I can demonstrate it here in the portal as well. So we do have the MIM extensions installed here. And as you can see, you've got this new problems logging in option down here at the bottom. So if we click on that, what you're going to see is you're going to see the MIM extensions loaded, and it's going to prompt me directly for the information that was pre-stored in MIM and is associated with the user account that is last logged into the desktop. So here we will enter blue. And our favorite movie was Braveheart. And city was Greensboro. And then when we click next, we should be given the option to either enter a new password or unlock our account. So here we're going to enter a new password. So let's go back over here and we're just going to X pound lowercase s $9 uppercase P GR, because everyone uses complex passwords today, right? So we're going to copy that. We're going to come back over here and we're going to type that in for our new password. And we will do that again just to make sure we're being consistent. We'll hit next. We'll give it a few minutes. And now you can see that it does say we've successfully reset our password. We'll hit finish there. And now we can go in here and we can type in our new password and log in with the new password we just reset. So as we mentioned earlier, this greatly reduces the likelihood that an attacker could call up the help desk and fraudulently reset a user's account. But reset the user's password, but we haven't talked about unlock yet. So I do want to come up here and I want to sign out again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going here and I'm going to just enter a bunch of random strings real quickly a few times and get this account to, it should lock out on the 4th attempt. And now our account is currently locked out. So historically, user would have to call the help desk and request this account be unlocked. But here what we're going to do is we're actually going to switch back over to the portal and we're going to enter our information again. Father's middle name was John. Mother's maiden name was Adams. And city was Greensboro. And we'll click next. And you'll see we also have the account unlock, which allows us to keep the same password we've had previously. And typically where you might see this come in handy, user changes their password, goes out of town for a few days, comes back and forgets they changed their password, so they accidentally lock their account out. Or perhaps they change their password and when they come back, they remember their password, but then, sorry, we've got a error there. Sometimes we may have to start this process over again. So let's just do that. They may have their password entered correctly when they're logging in. However, their mobile device may be still storing the old password that they did not update, which could result in their account being locked out. Middle name is John. Favorite movie, Braveheart. His name was Atkins. Let's click next and try this one more time. And now you can see that the account was unlocked. So if we come back over here, grab our updated password that we had temporarily forgotten about. And now we can log back into the system. So that's all of the self-service related activities for the demo today, and these are typically around users being able to manage their own identity from a perspective of gaining access back to a system. But one more thing that I do want to demonstrate for you is the account deprovisioning capabilities. And as I mentioned to you earlier, you'll see in the HR file that we have employee status, and for this user the employee status is set to active. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to change that to T for terminated. We're going to save our HR file again, and then we're going to go back over here and we're going to run processing one more time. We'll give this a few minutes to complete. As you can see, we're running the MIM service updates first. Shortly after that, you'll see an update from HR, and then we'll point out the changes that have been made from the MIM perspective. And then we'll look at Active Directory and attempt to log on again as well. So if you look at our HR processing run, you'll see that there was one update, and that update does reference our Mark Hall account 1375. And if we go in here and look at this, we'll see that employee status has changed to terminated. So what does that mean to Active Directory? If we log back into our domain controller and do a refresh on our MIM provisioned organizational unit, you'll see that Mark Hall is no longer in the MIM provisioned OU. So where did he go? Well, if we look down here, we actually have a terminated users OU. And if we do a refresh here, we should see now we have Mark Hall's account. Not only has it been moved, but the account has been disabled. And additionally, one thing you can't see here is that the password has also been reset on this account. And I'll show you quickly how that is done and what that is formulated of. And it also gives you an idea when I mentioned earlier that we could create random passwords from strings. In our deprovisioning here, once that user account was set to terminated, all of these updates took place, but around the password, we're actually writing in this uppercase P, @ lowercase s, $, then generating a random number between 100,000 and 999,099, followed by lowercase w, 0, uppercase R, and D. So not only is that user account disabled, it's been moved to a disabled OU, but also the password has been reset. So if the account was re-enabled, the password would be a random string that was unknown. So I'm going to go back over here now, and we're going to actually sign out Mr. Hall's account again. And sometimes this takes a couple of seconds. So we're going to hope that now when we go to log in, we should get a reboot would have corrected this, but the cache credentials sometimes bites us. And now you see the account has been disabled. Please see your system administrator. So all access to that user has been revoked as soon as MIM processed and went through, detected it was a terminated user, made the updates accordingly to Active Directory. So with that, I am going to attempt to get back to our presentation here. And really the last thing that we haven't talked about, I want to touch on real briefly, is privileged access management. And Microsoft has a model for privileged access management. Some of these components are already in place today. Some of them are going to be enhanced upon with the coming of Windows Server 2016. But this is really the model and the concept that Microsoft is looking forward to for privileged access management and the implementation of just-in-time access and just enough administration. And we start this circle with preparation. We want to identify the groups in the existing forest where users have advanced or significant privileges. And the idea is to recreate those groups without members in a bastion forest where a specific and special form of trust has been established so that users can be added to groups within the bastion forest that are then granted the elevated access levels in their local forest. From there, we'll move to protect. And there, that's setting up a lifecycle and authentication protection methodology. We'll want to incorporate multi-factor authentication from Azure MFA so that when users request administration, not only are they challenged for their credentials, but they are also challenged for a two-factor authentication to prevent programmatic attacks from malicious software or subsequent to any credential theft. From there, we'll move into operate. And here, after an authentication requirement is met and a request is approved, and this can be the manual or automated, A user account gets added temporarily to a privileged group in the Bastion Forest, which then across the trust would have the necessary access rights to perform the administrative tasks in the local forest. And this occurs for a preset amount of time. And during this time, the administrator has all the privileges and access permissions needed and that are assigned to the group in the Bastion Forest. Once that time has expired, the account is removed from the group and access is thus removed. And finally, we want to talk about monitoring. The model that Microsoft has built in includes auditing, alerts, and reports of privileged access requests. And you can even review the history of privileged access and see who has performed said activity. You can decide whether the activity is valid or not and easily identify unauthorized activity, such as an attempt to add a user directly to a privileged group in the original forest. This is important not only to identify malicious software, but also for tracking inside attacks. So with that, some of the final thoughts I would have to share with you is to always consider when you're looking at solutions for preventing identity theft, thwarting identity theft, that this is a people, process, and technology approach activity. MIM is a robust identity management platform, and it augments existing processes and can be incorporated into those existing processes, but some methods, specifically around users and manually making changes or manually running processes, will need to be changed. MIM in that position can provide the governance to not only secure your identity creation, but also provide the governance around the account creation to prevent circumvention of controls. So lastly, we have our call to action. And basically what this entails is New Signature's willing to work with your organization to schedule a MIM whiteboard and discovery session. During this session, we'll focus on several key elements. Some of these are listed here, such as understanding the current identity requirements within your organization, discussion around your current identity management practices or solutions you may have in place, discussion of potential MIM integration and how it would fit into your organization, and these could include identity data synchronization, provisioning and deprovisioning, self-service capabilities, potential group management or role-based access control solutions that MIM can provide, reporting and audit capabilities, and the output would also include a budgetary estimate for the cost of the MIM deployment. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Peter McKenzie to give you a little bit more information about New Signature. Peter?
Thanks very much, Steve. Appreciate that. And thanks for the talk. I mean, I've heard these kinds of conversations before with clients, but it always floors me when I look at some of the current stats on the costs. So just that one little piece you were talking about, the password resets. I mean, Forrester says that it's around $70 per call for a help desk for a password reset. You know, that's an amazing cost, and 30 to 40% of the calls into a help desk are for password resets. So if you look at enterprises averaging a call and a half per user per year, $120 or so, you know, from that standpoint, and the reset systems can cost up to $10 a user per year, there's certainly a strong business case. So I would encourage you all to have a quick look at the offer that Steve had up and take advantage of it. Now, in terms of New Signature, just a very quick background, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. I don't have control, requesting control. Steve, if you could flip that over. Perfect. So In terms of new signature, I know some of you have been on the call before, but we just want to make sure that you have a good grounding for who we are and what we do, in addition to what you've heard so far. So who we are, we're a full service technology company. We are grounded on delivering great customer experiences. That gives us great referenceability with other clients. It gives us high customer satisfaction numbers, and it gives us pride in our delivery. So things that we can easily demonstrate, should you wish to see those. We do that on the Microsoft platform. We have chosen it. Our owners have chosen that platform. We have deep relationships with Microsoft and have for many years. And then how we do it is we plan out whatever it is that we're working on with each individual client. We build that solution, and lastly, we operate it. So we operate it 24/7 out of our network operations center. We operate it through application support when we're building specific solutions for our clients, and we do all those things. Lastly, just a bit about some of the other services that we provide. We break our company loosely into 3 different pillars. In green, you have professional services, so 2 different areas of that. The platform productivity, of which of the 4 bullet points, we're talking about identity management today. We also have the infrastructure, we have our cloud productivity, and we have our cloud platform. And then beneath that, we really have our custom areas. So we develop enterprise mobile applications, websites and web applications, lots of portals and intranets, and web strategy sessions. So the portals and intranets can be combined with identity management in terms of providing people a fantastic user experience when they log in to do things like password resets. It's a portal where your employees are going to see everything they can do. You got to make it easy for them to take advantage of that. In the middle, we have our managed services, so the operate side of what I discussed. So we have our technology management experience, and we have the which is what we do when we deliver 24/7 service for our clients. We have our IMX solution, which is really our enterprise, where we take over management of network servers, application layers, etc. And then lastly, and kind of most recently, we have our CMX, which is the cloud version of that, where we help support our clients through Azure, Office 365, and Dynamics CRM Online. Lastly, in orange, cloud applications. So from our custom design arm of the business, we have several packaged solutions where we start out by delivering a specific need for a customer and then discover that many of our clients would actually like to take advantage of that. So we take it a step further and we build it into a product and sell it out to our clients. Great example is that last one, Cloud Management Portal, that helps our clients manage their Azure spend with Microsoft and also right-size those environments and get very detailed reporting that allows them to do things like internal chargebacks to different lines of business based on the actual Azure spend that they're doing. With that, Victoria, I think I would like to open it up to Q&A and see if there's anything in the chat windows.
Thanks so much, Peter. Yes, if anybody has any questions, please place them into the chat box. I do have a few questions here. So the first one is, how often does MIM update identity information?
This is Phil Bartholomew. I'll take that one. Before I do, I'd just like to mention, thank you, Steve. It was a great talk. Thank you, Peter. It amazes me how many times I go into large organizations and see data that is being synchronized between different systems. Security has no idea it's being synchronized. It's not protected. And a tool like MIM, a technology like MIM, is a great way to start to get a handle around that. As Steve said in his presentation, it's still people, process, and technology to make it all come together. But having a good foundation, a good platform to help you with that is very key to success. To the question, just to repeat that back, it's how often does MIM processing run? Out of the box, MIM is something you can run on a scheduled basis. You may run it every hour, every 2 hours, every 3 hours, sometimes once or twice a day, and that's it. However, when we talk about identity theft and we talk about access removal and doing things in a prompt fashion, you can use workflow activities within MIM to trigger things to happen immediately. So if we have a termination button, we click the button, click OK, it goes through a series of tasks to immediately terminate the user, which would include things like the removal of groups from the user object in AD. So you can set up workflows to do things on a very immediate basis and use the synchronization engine to enforce it, such that things like if they're added, somebody adds them back to groups after they've been removed, well, MIM is a tool that can be used to enforce the removal of those groups longer term. So 2 ways to handle that: scheduled on a scheduled task basis, or as often as you like, or use workflow activities to make actions very immediate.
Thanks so much, Phil. The second question is, what other platforms other than Active Directory can MIM manage identities for?
That's a great question. It's just about anything that you can think of, MIM can synchronize with. Out of the box, MIM has what we call connectors to sync with different database types, whether it be SQL or Oracle or DB2. It can also sync with systems like Lotus Notes, IBM directory services, you name it, it's there. Now, if for some reason there's not an out-of-the-box connector for MIM to sync data with, there's an extensible connector that we can use to basically where we're given a framework, and if we have a web services interface or an application programming interface, we can just plug our add, replace, and delete actions right into that framework. As long as we know what that web services query is or what the application interface services query is, we can just plug it right in and connect to just about any system we want. And of course, as a last resort, you always have a flat file mechanism. So it's not my preference. I don't think it's anybody's preference, but sometimes you have to do it. You can export from a system into a flat file and then import that flat file right into MIM to sync data in and out.
Thank you, Phil. I believe that is all of our questions that we have for today. If anybody has any further questions, you can email us at info@newsignature.com. And that is pretty much it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. The recording and slides will be sent in 2 to 3 business days. Thank you so much to Steve, Phil, and Peter, our presenters today. Hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.